Hello and welcome to FortiGuard Live. This is Derek Mankey, and joining me once again, and hopefully not for the last time, there's always so much to talk about, is Amar Lakhani. How you doing, Amar?
I am great. I'm ready to kick off our 2021 World Tour, I guess.
Yes, indeed. So we are in the new year, and putting everything behind us last year. Of course, we can learn from history like we always do, but there's never too long of a pause that we can have. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy beat when it comes to the threat landscape. And so let's talk about some of those developments. First thing I want to talk about is online shopping. So we're talking about this last year. It's something that, if we look at our FortiGuard Labs data, it continues to be, and this isn't a surprise, right? But it continues to be a regular beat. We talked about the anomalies last year where instead of seeing this massive spike, surge when it comes to typical shopping seasons, every day has been a Cyber Monday, as we call every Monday. We've seen that continues to hold true, right? We've seen continuous pace to online shopping, even as we are in the new year, past all of the holiday sales. So that continues to happen. But some of the things that we talked about and we're seeing are the server-side attacks, right? So these are attackers who are going after shopping carts, mostly application flaws on the server side, because if they can do that, they're landing more fishes, so to speak, when they go on the, when they go to do their regular shopping on what should be legitimate sites. What are you seeing on that end?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I really was expecting online shopping attacks to kind of die down a little bit, especially after the Christmas season. But we really haven't seen that. And what we are still seeing, right, we started seeing this during the shopping season, and it's just continued to grow, is what we call e-skimming attacks. And what e-skimming attacks is when attackers go on legitimate websites and they take over the shopping cart. They inject their own code, they find vulnerabilities. Sometimes there are known vulnerabilities, sometimes there are not, or 0 days. And they're essentially getting in the middle of those attacks, kind of like a man-in-the-middle attack, where they're capturing financial information, credit card information, PIN numbers, whatever that may be, and sending it back to their own domains or their own servers. So they're capturing everything that they need to make other purchases or clone a card or whatever they need to do, and then shipping that back to their own domain, and then usually selling that in bulk or using that to for fraud, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And the thing is that obviously by focusing on the shopping cart information, it's still going after the credit card information. So that still seems to be a big target. Like we always said that passwords were effectively dead, but credit card information still seems to be alive and well, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's never going to stop, right? Because it's obviously the only way that most people are buying things online. With credit cards, even with chip technology, when you're buying things online, you don't really have to have the card present, obviously, because you're not sending your card over the internet somewhere. You're just putting in the numbers. So obviously, it makes it very opportunistic for attackers to try and get that information and use that information somehow when you're not around or when you're not present.
Yeah, and beyond the virtual side, there's always the physical side to security too. And I know that we're having a conversation recently also about something you're seeing with Bluetooth skimmers too. That's quite interesting.
Right. So let's not forget a skimmer. A traditional skimmer basically is like a fake credit card reader. It usually goes over your normal credit card readers. So you put in a credit card, the fake credit card reader captures information, and then attackers use that to clone credit cards, steal the numbers. Normally with these physical skimmers, they've been around like ATM machines, bank systems, gas stations, a very big target of that. What attackers have been doing in the past is they usually used to physically grab these systems, take them with them, and then dump all the information out of them. Now what they're doing is the new physical skimmers, they're Bluetooth enabled, and they're really, really popular. We've been seeing like a lot of them being sold on the dark net. So all attackers need to do is they install these skimmers, and just like a smart gas company, they'll just drive by the gas station or wherever they have these skimmers, turn off their laptop, download the information, and drive away. They don't even have to touch anything or risk getting caught.
Yeah, you mentioned a keyword here. Let's talk about that a little bit more, the drive-bys. So this is modern day war driving, right? I mean, war driving is the old school. We saw this typically with using Wi-Fi, right? So the Wi-Fi was a vector where they would try to obviously get into networks to, and do passive monitoring on those networks for credentials, things like that. But this is essentially lower risk to the attacker, right? Because they're able to just go by, scoop information. It doesn't have to necessarily even be the person who installed the skimmer, right? It can be another agent going around just to grab the info off of it.
Yeah, you're hitting it right on the nail. That it gives them a lot of flexibility. With Wi-Fi, like, it requires power, right? So you usually have to have it plugged in. With Bluetooth, it's low powered. It's usually not active until it's like turned on or scanned actively. So they can have a battery in there. It'll work for a couple of weeks, whoever knows how long. Yeah. They don't even have to go back and risk anything. If an attacker walks up to a skimmer and is actually physically taking the skimmer, there's a chance that someone may see them. They maybe get photographed. There may be police presence around, right? So absolutely, they can just tell someone, hey, drive up with this mobile phone or a laptop and just sit there, and once you see the green button, you're good to go. They don't even have to have technical knowledge once it's set up.
And that's the thing. It's quick, because like in the sort of older days of war driving, it could look suspicious, right? It was a proverbial someone sitting in a van or a car on their laptop outside of a house, because it took some time to collect packets and do these things. Where in this case, it can literally be in and out, and it can look like normal activity, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a big point of flexibility. So COVID-19, I'm still here, of course, but that was the theme of 2020. And when it came to a lot of the lures that we saw through email activity, but not just email, through, we talked about voice phishes, we talked about SMS, smishing as an example. There are so many, social media, basically any attack vector that, cyber criminals could get their hands on, they would use and try to leverage COVID-19. What we've seen recently, kicking off this year is what's the hottest, of course, is the vaccine rollouts now. So there's been a lot of interesting developments, something that viewers should definitely be aware of. It's like we always talk about client and server side security, right? So on the end user attacks, i.e. the attacks that are targeted directly to the end users, we're seeing a whole bunch of clever things. I wouldn't say that it's too surprising, again, unfortunately, but things like offering obviously bogus, hope. So providing cheap vaccines. We've seen dollar amounts less than $200 as an examples for a readily available vaccine, which of course is not. So that's one issue, is if it's too good to be true, it is, like we always talk about. But there's also the other side, right, where we're seeing attackers going after the providers themselves, trying to sell bulk vaccine too.
Yeah, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and that always rings true. And as always with COVID, attackers are using the opportunity to take advantage of anyone's emotion, and that always seems to evolve as the news cycle evolves. Right now, the COVID vaccine, obviously still very hard to get for a lot of people, even for a lot of medical providers and hospitals. There's a lot of hospitals that just want to get their own frontline workers vaccinated and protected. And so they're asking, like, their counties, their government officials, other hospitals, like, if they have any extra doses for their own personnel. And of course, attackers are taking advantage of this thing, like, hey, you know what, we have extra doses, we can send your hospital, please send payment here. Obviously, we never get that. They never get that. We are starting to see, like, in our email honeypots, some emails that have this type of language. Don't know if anyone's falling for it or not, but there's probably an opportunity there for attackers. Obviously, there's an opportunity for them. Everyone's trying to get a vaccine. There's certain groups that can only get it at certain times. So they're saying, hey, you can get it right now, pay up front, or we can skip you ahead of the line. So a lot of scams, a lot of fraud happening right there.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're going to take anything medical, take it from an official entity. Like, don't go out on the internet and take it from someone that's unknown when you're taking medical vaccines.
It's the same thing as virtual. And this is the thing that I talk about a lot, and it's really important, I think, is, when it comes to something physical, especially something you're putting in your body, that I think people should have a higher sense of security when it comes to that. Where is this coming from? Is it trusted? But they don't oftentimes when it comes to accepting applications to install on your phone. But it should be the same mentality. Those words you just said, is it coming from a trusted source? Do I know about this? A lot of people don't ask themselves when they're installing an app from an app store, as an example, or an executable on a machine. But it really should be the same thing.
Yeah, attackers are using the same techniques. They're creating that sense of urgency. They're saying, hey, you may be in a group that's not going to get the vaccine probably until summer, but we can get it to you right now, but you need to make a decision right now where we only have a few of these left. Please pay right now and we'll get you on the list. And everyone's like, yes, let me click on this right away. Let me secure my spot. But unfortunately, as soon as you click on that, it's fraud and you've lost your money. So that's what they're using. They're using the same techniques that they've always used to create that sense of urgency.
Yeah, and we saw that even last year with, so this is also coming down to supply chain attacks in a sense, trying to piggyback and ride that wave. I mean, we saw that with, PPE, the personal protection equipment, because that was also sparse and hard to get a hold of earlier last year. And it was the same kind of thing, right? We saw a lot of phishing scams related to that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So expect more of that. We talked also about the edge access Trojan. So a lot of these attacks going to the edge. So, the theme here is being malware code, being flexible, being able to have a further reach to that attack surface. So not just being focused on mobile phone, as an example, on Android or iOS, or just focused on PC, but rather having a wider focus with one malware campaign. And we started to see some of that. We're seeing, things like Golang we talked about. There's a new IoT-based botnets that can actually infect various IoT platforms. So that's already happening, and I think we're going to continue to see that expand. But there's recent analysis that was put out on Adrozec as an example. This is a malware family that was being successful through multiple browsers, multiple applications, and it's a big infrastructure. I mean, they're controlling hundreds of thousands of domains, and the malware itself was doing browser injection, right, to be able to see malicious search results once that browser was infected.
Yeah, so I think what we have to take away here is people have kind of gotten used to the fact that browsers traditionally have been secure, right? They get updated automatically a lot of times. People don't worry about browsers as they used to worry about email attacks or phishing attacks. And I think we're going to start seeing a little bit of shift in those attacks. I think browsers are going to be they are going to be the new edge for a lot of people. We're going to start seeing a lot more attacks. Those attacks don't necessarily have to find vulnerabilities in the browser, but just the back end on how the browser processes things like search, like how it delivers an ad, like things that it's processing. And that gives attackers opportunity. And what we're seeing with this particular botnet that you mentioned is it allows the attackers to essentially create thousands of drones, hundreds of thousands of drones where they can attack machines. Yeah. And they're really flexible with Golang, with Python, with other places. They can attack Windows systems, Mac systems, Linux, edge devices, IoT devices. They don't care. They're very flexible.
Yeah, and the key thing we're seeing is injection here again too. So again, it's something that is traditionally secure, but once you have one of those malicious DLLs extensions that are loaded, it's essentially game over, right? And the reality is a lot of these edge devices have browsers themselves. And the injections are quite popular. It's like what we talked about with some of the playbooks before for ATM hijacking, right? Same thing, trying to crack those boxes open by doing DLL injection too.
Exactly. Everything pretty much has a browser. Even if you're not like opening up an application and putting in a website's address in it, it has a browser. It's using HTTP, HTTPS protocols to connect, to send communication, for updates a lot of times. So it has that code built in, and that's what they're taking advantage of. And that's what I want to make clear is that's why these attacks are so pervasive and also so widespread, is because that protocol is used everywhere. It's not just having a browser on your desktop and thinking like, okay, my device doesn't have that, I'm safe. You probably are not if your device is using the protocol. Yeah,
absolutely. Always better to think you're not safe than to think you are safe all the time. Right? Yeah. So on that team, just wrapping up, what's to come this year? I think just for those social engineering lures to ARM users, I think that Of course, we're going to continue to see the things we talked about, the vaccine, phishing targets, but also things like, as we come in these new lockdowns, restrictions being lifted, we're going to see things that we didn't really see last year that we did see the years before, but new variations of it. I think things like, more of these health authority orders, those sense of urgency that you talked about. There's going to be more promotion likely later this year on things like travel, as an example, things that are going to be front of mind for people, right?
Man, I think we're going to see an explosive, of attacks on travel-related things, especially later in the year. Everyone's going to want to get out. You're going to get emails on specials, on discounts, on airfare, on hotels, on vacation packages, and I bet there will be a lot of fraud in that because everyone's going to be jumping. Everyone's already jumping. They're ready to get out of lockdowns in a lot of places. So I think we'll see a lot of that.
Yeah, not just travel too, but other things that were closed and opening, right? Even restaurant promotions as an example, I think too.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Hey, it's been great as always. We can talk for hours, and we do behind the scenes, but that's what we're doing 24/7, 365 at FortiGuard Labs. Thanks, Amar, for joining me again. This is Derek Mankey with FortiGuard Labs, signing off.
Thanks.